Settled is a charity that is working hard to ensure that all Europeans are able to continue to call the UK home after Brexit. We provide advice to European citizens in numerous languages through our network of more than 100 volunteers across the UK. They work across emails, phone lines, and social media to reach as many people as possible, keeping in mind that the deadline to apply for the EU settlement scheme is June 30th. You can find out more about Settled by visiting settled.org.uk or searching for We Are Settled on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Before I introduce the special guest speakers, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. On your right-hand side, you'll see two boxes. One is the Q&A box. So if you have questions for our panelists, put your questions in there and I'll ask the panelists at the end of the session. If you want to direct your question to a specific person, please put their name in there. And another box is for chat. And that is where if you are having any issues with the tech, write it in there and we'll do our best to help you. So I would like to introduce our first panelist. He is one of the leading figures in the field of Romani language, history, and the education of Roma children in Europe. The author, historian, and academic Hristo Kyuchukov joins us now.
Yeah, good afternoon from Berlin, from Germany. For the time being, I live in Berlin since 11 years, but I'm officially working at the University of Silesia in Katowice in Poland. So today I'm going to speak a little bit about the history of Roma, and I will try to answer the question, who are the Roma? Can you see the slides? So these are the faces of Roma. Nowadays faces. These are the Russian Roma, very beautiful. These are the Spanish Roma, even more beautiful. These are the Romanian Roma. Wow, interesting, huh? All these old ladies with this beautiful dress. And these are the Hungarian Roma. But the Roma were not always like this. The Roma in the past were like, these are two Roma women from Turkey, and these are Roma from Bulgaria in the beginning of the 20th century. So these are Roma groups somewhere in the Balkans. Again, Roma from Romania. Roma who are called Calderaș. And Roma from southeast Bulgaria. Or you have this kind of Roma from postcards from the last century, or this kind of Roma trying to show the beauty of Roma, or yeah, this is a postcard, another postcard, but now these are some Roma from different parts of the world, from Iran, Turkey, and from Finland, Sweden, of course, Calderaș Roma from Romania, and nomadic Roma, Hungarian Roma, and again, some postcards, and Roma from Bulgaria, and Roma from the 70s, 1970s. And this is my mother, Roma from Bulgaria, Muslim Roma woman, from 1980s. She passed away, and today is exactly 24 years ago how she was, she died, and I'm a little bit sad about that, but still I have to do my duties. So why Roma left India? And do we know that the Roma left India, or maybe they came from somewhere else? there are all kinds of theories and all kinds of gossips. There are even theories saying that the Roma came from the moon. They are not from this planet. And maybe they have the right, who knows? But this is what we know from the history of India, that there was an empire which was called the Ghaznavid Empire. And this was in nowadays northwest parts of India, in the two states of Punjab and Rajasthan. So on the end of the 9th century and the beginning of the 10th century, end of 9th century and beginning of the 10th century, Ghaznavid started to attack. He was a Muslim and he was attacking the Hindu religion people who had the Hindu religion. And one part of these people had to escape from the war, and they left the territory of India. But the neighboring country was not nowadays Pakistan. So that was the Persia. There were no Arabic states in that period. So moving from India, there are two theories of two English researchers, Sampson and Turner, who suppose that the Roma came from the group of Indians whose name was Dom. But this Dom is pronounced with combination of two other letters, so it is Drom. So in Indian languages, there are these kind of combinations of two or three sounds. And Turner and Sampson suggested that these people belong to different castes and subcastes, or even some of them were belonging to the group of untouchables, and leaving the country and escaping from the war, they had to start to communicate between themselves somehow. And they were speakers of different languages or different dialects of the same language. And then their idea is that somewhere in Armenia, the Roma divided into three groups. And nowadays, these three groups are known like Roma, Dom, which remained in the Arabic world, nowadays Arabic world, and Lom, who came to Central Asia. And Turner suggested that this didn't happen in Armenia, as Sampson suggested, but Turner was thinking that maybe the Roma started to divide each other. These groups of people started to divide each other earlier before to come to Armenia. Why Armenia is very important in the life of Roma? Because first time in Armenia, the Roma met the Christian religion, the Christianity as a religion. And in Romani language, entered some words from Armenian language. Nowadays, these words still exist, approximately 10, 11 centuries after they left the Indian subcontinent. So this is how they were traveling and coming. In this map, unfortunately, I couldn't make it bigger. You can see the years in which years the Roma arrived to which country, which part of the Europe. So Roma exist only in Europe, North America, South America, Latin American countries, in Australia, and there are some Roma even in South Africa, but there are no Roma, for example, in countries like Japan or China. So why Roma? and not gypsies or not Tsigan. Let's a little bit speak about these names. So this is a picture of the Byzantine Empire. So Byzantine Empire, nowadays Greece, had an extremely big, played an extremely big role in the life of Roma. Actually, Roma were formed as Roma in the Byzantine Empire. Until coming to Byzantine Empire, they were just a group of Indians, speakers of different languages, and most probably having different religions. So in the Byzantine Empire, this group of people spent approximately 150 years. The Greeks didn't like the people because they had this strange outlook, and their skin was dark, their hairs were black, and they were speaking language which the Greeks didn't understand. So then the Greeks gave them the name Atzinganos, Atzinganoi. So this word had the meaning of people with whom you are not allowed to come in contact because you are going to pollute your soul. So something like intouchables, nowadays intouchables in India. So from this word Atzinganoi, which was given by the Greeks, in many other languages, the name which the outside world gave to them was Tsigan, Zigeuner, Singari, Zigeinere, Tsigani, and etc. And even Gitan and Gitanos, they come from the same word. But actually, these people were calling themselves Roma because the group to which they were belonging in India, this was the name of the group, and the name of the group was Rom. So from this Rom, we have, as I already mentioned, these three groups, Rom and Lom and Dom. So Dom and Lom, these two groups, they speak totally different languages. They speak Indian mixed with Arabic words, or Indian mixed with some Central Asian languages like Uzbek, Tajik, Kyrgyz languages, and etc. So another very important country in the life of Roma was the Ottoman Empire, because before to come to Ottoman Empire, maybe I should say that Greek language had a big role in the formation of Romani language. Nowadays, in Romani, we have more than 250 words which were adapted from Greek language, and they still exist in almost all Roma dialects around the world. And the Roma were converted to Christianity, those who didn't accept the Christianity in Armenia. Then in the Byzantine Empire, they converted to Christianity. So Byzantine Empire had extremely big role for formation of Roma and Romani language. In Ottoman Empire, one part of the Roma converted from Christianity to Muslim religion, and they changed their names. Because in the Ottoman Empire, the Christians had higher taxes than the Muslims. And those Roma who accepted and converted to Muslim religion and changed their names, they didn't have to pay taxes. There are some registers from the Ottoman Empire which are giving this kind of information to us nowadays. Nowadays, Romania and Moldova, in that time, in the mid-centuries, was called Vlachia. This was one country. Vlachia had a big role in the life of the Roma. It's the Roma here were kept, one part of the Roma here were kept in slavery between 1400 until 1862, from 1400 until 1862. So approximately 460 years, one part of the Roma were kept in slavery. Nowadays, there are Roma groups in Romania which do not speak Romani language. They look like Roma, they know that they are Roma, they have Christian religion, or some of them converted to evangelism, and they have the professions which all other Roma groups have, but they don't speak the language. Why? Because the rules in Vlachia was that those slaves, those Roma who were slaves and did belong to the owners of the land and rich Romanians that time, they didn't have the right to speak with their family members in their mother tongue, in the Romani language, and this was forbidden. In case some of the slaves were speaking the Romani language and the owner of that slave hears that, the punishment was extremely bad. They were cutting their tongues. So this is why nowadays one part of the Roma communities, not only in Romania, but also we have this kind of group in Austro-Hungarian. In Austro-Hungarian Empire, they were in Austro-Hungarian Empire after that, and today in Hungary, this kind of there are this kind of groups which do not speak anymore Romani. They speak only Romanian language, or they speak variety of Romanian, old variety of Romanian. Austro-Hungarian Empire was another very important empire in the life of the Roma, because the Queen Maria Theresia had very huge assimilatory policy towards Roma. Every Roma child born in the Roma family was taken from the families and were given to non-Roma families. So the children didn't have the right to see their parents, and the parents didn't have the rights to contact the adopted parents, the parents who adopted the child. So the children grow up not knowing anything about themselves, their history, their culture, their traditions, and their language, and they were growing up with the idea that they are Hungarians. In Hungarian language, that time, there was a name which was the New Hungarians. Actually, New Hungarians had the meaning of people who were adopted from Roma families. And nowadays there are Roma groups in Hungary who are anthropologically, they look like Roma, but they don't know any single Roma word. And nowadays there are this kind of attempts to learn Romani and to learn the Roma history and to learn Romani language and culture and everything, which was lost in this period of time when there was this Austro-Hungarian Empire. The Roma in West Europe, coming to Central and West Europe, they were especially in German territories. In order, Germany was not like today one country, but these were small countries, and to pass from country to country, the Roma had to have their certificates and permissions to cross the countries. And in order to survive and to be able to travel, sometimes they were lying to the Germans that they are pharaohs or kings or whatever. And this was how they got the permission to travel in the territory of nowadays Germany. But the situation of Roma in Spain was extremely bad, because the Catholic Church was extremely against the Roma, and particularly against the Roma women who were fortune tellers. And the church declared that the Roma women are sisters of the devil, and they are witches, and because of that, they were killed and they were fired on a stick publicly. And in Spain, there was a strict regulation that Romani language was forbidden, again, also like in Romania. And this is why today the Spanish Gitanos, they don't speak Romani language. The punishment was exactly the same like in Romania. Their tongues were cut. In France, the Roma had the name Gitan from the adaptation from the word Tsigan. And in England, the name was given to the Roma was gypsies because when the Roma came to England, a lot of people were thinking that those black hair and dark skinned people are coming from Egypt, and they called them Egyptians. And from Egyptians later the word turned to be gypsy, and this is nowadays the name of the one part of the Roma in Spain, in England. So in the meaning of the word Tsigan, Tsigoiner, Tsingari, and etc. As I told you, it was like a person with whom you shouldn't get in touch because your soul will be polluted. But in Romania, the second meaning of the word Tsigan was a slave. And this is why nowadays most of the Romanian Roma do not accept to be called Tsigan, Tsigani, because this is not only, the meaning is not only to be untouchable, we shouldn't get in touch with you, but there is also a second very bad meaning: you are a slave. And in Germany, the name Zigeuner had the other very bad meaning. So maybe you know this sign. This is the brown triangle, which was on the what is called that, jackets and the shirts of the people who were sent to the concentration camps. In Germany, the Zigeuner, before even to start the Second World War, they were considered people with the not clean blood, together with the Jewish. But before to start the persecution of the Jewish, the German government took first measures to send the Roma to so-called work camps, which work camps after that they turned to concentration camps. But this is the monument of the biggest monument in Europe, which is dedicated to the memory of Roma and Sinti in Germany, in Berlin. And this is the Holocaust memorial in Berlin. And there are these around this lake, which is artificially made, are written the names of the all concentration camps where the Roma were killed. And this is the Barrack 28 from Auschwitz in Poland, where there was the Zigeuner lager with this was something extremely huge. And if you ever in your life have the possibility to go to Auschwitz, please go there and visit the this Zigeuner lager to see what they were doing to all other people, but also particularly to Roma. And yeah, there was a lake clear not so far away from the Zigeuner lager, where all the killed and after that burned in the gas chambers Roma, their ashes were thrown to that lake. And because of the human ashes, the lake turned to be black. So these are pictures from Auschwitz. This is Auschwitz. Yeah, Arbeit macht frei. Work makes you free. And these are some survivors of Holocaust survivors, Sinti, two Sinti men from Germany. The one who is next to me already died. And this is Zonny Weiss from the Netherlands. And he's still alive. I think he's something like 90 years already, maybe. So after the Second World War, one part of the Roma were living in the communist countries. What happened to them? And I think I have still few minutes. The government, the communist governments, they had some clear policies towards Roma. The first policy was absolute assimilation of the Roma. So the Roma shouldn't have identity. There was forbidden to speak about Roma identity. There was forbidden to speak about this, that Roma have language or they are related somehow to India. The Roma were mainly isolated and segregated in different ghetto types of settlement, very often with terrible conditions, and this kind of conditions still continue even today. If you go to the Roma settlements in Slovakia, in Czech Republic, Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, you will see those conditions there. So we were growing up in the communist system without knowing anything about our history, culture, traditions. It was forbidden. And in Bulgaria, for example, the names of the Muslim Roma were changed by force. And within few days, the Muslim Roma had to accept no new names, and actually they became the new Bulgarians. And this is how nowadays in Bulgaria there is a large Turkish-speaking Muslim Roma community, but with Bulgarian names. So what happened to Roma after the democratic changes in East Europe? So first of all, the open racism became something normal and natural in the societies, open racism against Roma. Direct discrimination, it doesn't matter how good you are, how educated you are, how integrated you are Roma, you are dirty Tsigan, you are dirty Gypsy and nothing more and nothing else. The segregation became even stronger. So even those who were integrated in the societies, those Roma families, they started to feel this open racism and direct discrimination, and they moved from the center of the town, for example, if they were living in the center of the town, to the Roma settlements, because they were feeling, and they are feeling, much safe and much better. So the neo-Nazi movement against Roma became a norm in East European countries nowadays. So we know about the attacks of neo-Nazis in Hungary some years ago, when they were throwing Molotov cocktails to the houses of Hungarian Roma and killing father and child. And there are cases of neo-Nazi attacks in Czech Republic, in Slovakia, in Bulgaria. So this is the natural environment of the Roma nowadays, and they have to deal with this situation in their everyday life. So one of the reasons why the Roma escaped from Bulgaria, from Romania, from Slovakia, from Czech Republic is exactly this. They have to escape the neo-Nazi attacks. They have to escape the open racism and discrimination against them. They have to escape the humiliation. The situation of Roma nowadays in Europe is exactly like the situation of the Jewish people before the Second World War. And this explains why they don't want to stay in these countries. Thank you very much, and sorry once more.
Thank you, Hristo. Thank you so much for your time. Remember, if you have any questions for Hristo, please just put them in the Q&A and I'll put them to him at the end of the session. So our next panelist, we are calling in. So I'm just going to do a little test of the technology now. Crina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, excellent. So here we are. So this is a little bit different. Thanks to the modern world of home working and technology, we had to dial in Crina because the tech wasn't working, but it's really fascinating to speak to Crina. Crina is working on the ground in Luton with Roma communities in her town. She'll talk us through the issues and difficulties the Roma communities are facing in the UK, specifically Luton, and how we can help. Crina is the project manager at Luton Roma Trust. Crina.
Thank you so much, Alex, and thank you so much, Hristo, for such an enlightening presentation. I have to say that your presentation really highlighted the hardship which we as a nation had to pass through just so that we are where we are today, and we are still struggling, and our journey, is still going on. But just to actually comment on something that Hristo said, because I'm a Romanian Roma, and it is important to underline that the Roma were enslaved in Romania for 500 years. One of the reasons why I actually do not speak the Roman language is because of the Nazi regime of that time, when they actually came to my village and asked the mayor, are there any Roma here? Where are the Roma located? So the mayor at that time said there are no Roma in my village. And that's how my grandparents escaped from being taken to Auschwitz. But from that moment on, they decided not to teach their children the language, because that would have been the way we would have been identified as Roma. And then, there was a fear of being killed. So indeed, there have been so many situations like this, which in the end resulted in the exclusion of the Roma and their marginalization. And that's the reason in Central Eastern Europe, particularly, most of the Roma children are learning in segregated schools, and they face discrimination in all areas of public life. And this is actually very much connected with the reason of why they actually decided to immigrate to other European countries. And the reason for that is because they only wanted to have a better life for them and for their children. And one of the countries they chose was United Kingdom, of course. So in Luton Roma Trust is working with the Romanian and Bulgarian Roma on the ground. It is a grassroots charity which works with the community to socially integrate them. It works on a holistic basis, helping them with everything they actually need in order to be successful and to be feeling socially integrated. Luton Roma Trust, as I said, in the beginning at least, was operating from McDonald's or Burger King. We didn't have a space of our own. We were just meeting people in the city, sitting down with them somewhere, discussing with them, seeing what their matters were, and then trying to find a solution. However, in 2018, through a grant that we received from the Ministry of Housing, we were able to rent a space in the city center, and we still have this space now thanks to another grant which we were able to obtain. And we are located in the city center where Roma people now know where we are, and they come to us and we discuss with them. We made it like a small community center. So this is their space where they come and they feel comfortable. They can just drop in to listen to us or to see us or to just look for advice for their matters. So just to give an example of how our work is, if a person, for example, needs to register with the GP, but of course, they are newly comers. They do not speak the language. It would be very hard for them to understand the whole process. We help them. We sit down with them and explain them what they actually, what is the proof they need to submit in order to have the GP. We sit next to them and help them fill in the application. And if, for example, the beneficiary wouldn't manage to contact them, the registration office, or to get in touch with them and just giving the application, we would actually go with them to the GP's office. just to make sure they are registered and their matter is solved. That's how we work. That's our approach. Of course, our objective is to socially integrate them and make them not being dependent on us. But this remains a challenge, and we are developing projects so that they wouldn't be only able to learn English, but also become active citizens in the city. We estimate there are around 3,000 Roma in Luton, which only include Romanian and Bulgarian Roma beneficiaries. Unfortunately, because of our language limitations, we have been unable to support Polish or Slovakian Roma communities, but one of our medium-term objectives is to have someone in our team to work with these communities. Some of the challenges that Roma face in Luton, of course, include primarily the lack of language skills. Some of them also have low literacy levels, which makes the process of finding a job more difficult. Otherwise, most of the members of the community are well integrated, have a job, they send their children to school, and more or less have a normal life. These are all things which they could not have in their origin countries, where again they were, facing so much social exclusion and marginalization. The UK has offered them another life, where they could not have ever dreamt of in their origin countries, of course. Besides the daily interventions that we are actually carrying out with the people, we also implement projects. And one such project is our music project, which has been at the core of our heart. It provides a great opportunity for children to explore their talent, work on it, and hopefully succeed. We hope that through this project, we will create a pool of Roma models, which is so necessary for fighting discrimination and prejudice, of course. Luton Roma Trust works very closely with schools as well and children to make sure they have good educational achievements and that they are furthering their education in order to become successful. Our experience so far shows that there is a low understanding among public, local authorities, or the general public on who the Roma are. In our discussions, whenever we have the opportunity, we underline the importance of educating public authorities about the Roma, especially taking into consideration that the Roma interact with them on a daily basis if they either go to the council or to the school or when seeking medical assistance. In terms of challenges and also challenges related to our work and challenges in general, the pandemic has brought with it many challenges, particularly for the Roma, as one of the most vulnerable groups in the UK. They have suffered a lot. Many lost their jobs, many were at risk of eviction, or they didn't even have what to eat. It has affected them in every area of their life. And besides the pandemic, one area where they really face, which actually has become a challenge, is the deadline for the application under the EU settlement scheme in order for them to stay in this country and continue working, and reside here legally after Brexit. Although we did our best to help as many people as we could, there is still a high number of people who need support with their applications. And throughout the pandemic, Luton Roma Trust office was closed with a few exceptions. So most of the time we actually work from home, helping people remotely. It has been very challenging, especially that certain things cannot be solved from home, such as the consent we would need in order to speak on someone's behalf. Whenever we had the opportunity, we asked the Home Office to reconsider the deadline for application to the USS scheme, which is 30th of June 2021, so as to give to everyone a fair chance to send their applications in. Without applying, these people will become illegal and will be at risk of eviction or deportation. Another challenge, which of course, which is happening right now, is actually the census. And this will take place on 21st of March. Why I'm saying it is a challenge? It is because for the first time ever, it will be digital. So every person will have to go online and fill in their details. They'll receive a letter at home with a specific code, which they then need to insert on a governmental website and put in their personal details. This poses a lot of challenges for the Roma community because, as I had pointed out, most of the Roma in Luton don't speak English. besides all this, we are in a national lockdown, which makes things even harder. We are exploring the possibility of opening for a day the office so that people could come and request help if they need with the applications, but that is still under confirmation because of the national lockdown. We are working with the Office for National Statistics and will do our best to help as many people as we can. But of course, these challenges remain, and our work very much depends on how the public authorities perceive the whole matter and what sort of help they could actually give to the Roma, especially in the UK, in this particular situation. So this is pretty much what I wanted to say. I'm very much looking forward to the discussion and your questions. And do get in touch if you need to. I'm hoping Settled will actually put my contact details somewhere. So do get in touch if you think you want to know a bit more about the work we are doing, or you have any ideas of how we could actually improve our work or do things in another way. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Crina. That was really interesting, and thank you to everyone for sticking with us. We had a little bit of a tech issue there, but I think we overcame those problems, and Crina did a fantastic presentation for us. I would like to introduce our final panelist. Mihai Bica is in charge of policy and campaigning for the Roma support group and is a trustee of Settled. He will discuss the EU settlement scheme and the Roma, why it's so important for the Roma community to have their status and to secure their lives in the UK. Mihai.
Hi, yes, thanks very much. Just would like to check if you can hear me. Good, great. As Alec mentioned, my name is Mihai Bica and I work at Roma Support Group, which is the first and the biggest Roma-led charity in the UK. We were set up in 1998 to support Roma to settle in the UK. In the last quite few years, we are doing a lot of policy and campaigning work, and that includes doing policy and campaigning work on various areas regarding the life of Roma in the UK, like health, education, immigration, and not only. Just to add a bit of sort of contact of background of the Roma in the UK, I'd like to mention that, you know, as Hristo mentioned at the beginning, we had a first wave of Roma that came in the UK about 500 years ago, who are known as the English Gypsies today. But we also have the specific group of Roma whom I'm referring to now, which are Roma mainly from Eastern European countries that came in the UK following the fall of the communist bloc in Eastern Europe. These are mainly Roma from Romania, Bulgaria, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, Lithuania, and not only. We also have in the UK Roma from other places of the world, like the South America or South Africa or other parts of the world. So we're talking about a very diverse community, and this is why we always say Roma communities and not Roma community, especially here in the UK, where the community is so diverse. This means that the Roma speak different dialects of the Romani language, which some of them can be quite similar, but others can be quite different and considered to be different languages. It's very important for us to know this background in order to identify the right way to engage with us from the Roma communities. Now, in terms of how the situation looks for the community here in the UK, there is not much research available, but we can say that according to the most, let's say, accurate data, there is an indicated number of around 200,000 Roma live in the UK, and this data comes from a research back in 2013 by Salford University, and it's based on a 39% response rate. So we believe the number is a lot more higher, but this is the most accurate number we have today. As Crina mentioned, this year we have the census in the UK, and for the first time in the history, the census includes specific question and includes an ethnicity tick box for the Roma community. So we're very curious to see what will come out of that. But there is a lot of work that needs to be done in order to increase the likelihood of Roma participation in the census, and also more than that, the likelihood of people ticking that box. The situation today is of the Roma in the UK is, we have to say, and gladly, is that it's a lot much more better than that in the Eastern Europe. We see more Roma children going to schools. We see more Roma adults in work. We see they have better accommodation facilities comparing to the countries of origins. But unfortunately, there are still problems. And there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. We see in the area of health, Roma still facing problems, as Crina mentioned, with accessing health services. But in general, Roma have a lower life expectancy. They are getting ill, seriously ill at a lot more younger age comparing to other people from other communities. In terms of accommodation, unfortunately, the situation is not the best either. We see many Roma renting from rogue landlords usually in the poor areas of the cities in the UK. Many do not have security over the accommodation they rent, and a very few, very low percentage of Roma own the places they live, or they live in social housing provided by the local authorities. We also see situation regarding rough sleeping. Unfortunately, especially in London, there are quite significant numbers of Roma sleeping rough. And there is quite a limited level of support available for this specific community. In the area of employment, we see that the situation looks a lot better comparing to Eastern Europe. From our own research, our own data, we see that anywhere from 70 to 80% of the Roma that we work with are either in employment or self-employment, and they're working. Almost the rest of the Roma are either retired or on benefits and so on. So it's quite a very low percentage of those who are not working or and so on. But again, there is a lot of work that needs to be done in this area, especially in terms of communication, in terms of language support and so on, with many not being able to understand and to communicate with their employers and to communicate with services that can help if a problem comes up. In terms of education, as I mentioned earlier, the situation does look a lot more better, with the vast majority of Roma children in school in the UK, but we still see problems here as well, especially around school exclusions. From our own research, we've seen that Roma children are 4 or 5 times more likely to be excluded comparing to other children in schools, and there is a lot that we can talk about regarding the reasons of why this is happening. Also, the research indicates that there is a sort of around 30 months delay in the attainment in the results of Roma children by the end of the secondary education, and I'm including here gypsies and traveler children as well, comparing to children from other communities. And again, there is a lot of work that needs to be done in this area, but we are seeing a huge improvement. We are seeing young Roma children in school speaking fluently English, engage with their peers, engage with the society, and getting involved in opportunities that arise. We still see, quite significant levels of poverty in general in the Roma community. This is because of the sort of employment sector that the Roma community has access to, usually working in low-paid sector, which creates, obviously this situation of poverty with large Roma families with many children and so on, with usually women having to stay at home and look for those children, and also support the elderlies in their families and so on. And we also have the immigration issue, which is a very, very important one. I'm really sorry I've rushed through this through all of these things, but I know the time is pressing. In regards to the EU settlement scheme, which is a huge problem at this moment for us, I have to say that there has been a lot of support available, especially created to the funding that the Home Office has put forward for organization to help people, European citizens, to make applications. But unfortunately, not all this help available actually reached those from the community. This is because there was a limited knowledge about who the Roma are and how to properly engage with them. This is why, unfortunately, we've seen many opportunities missed in terms of providing support to those from our communities. We can't say for sure how many have applied yet. Yep, so the scheme was launched officially in March 2019. Many organizations have supported hundreds and thousands of people from the Roma communities. We know that this has made a huge difference for the community, but there is no way to come up with a specific number of how many have applied or not so far. But we know that there is still a significant gap there. Many people are still not aware of the need to make the applications, especially those whom organizations such as ours have not reached out properly, like those sleeping graph, like those working in the farming industry, those working in car washes, construction industry, and so on. There was not much information available in the community languages, and also the information was not very much accessible for those from the communities, because we're talking here about huge levels of digital exclusion. And what we see now is a situation, sort of a huge increasing problem is of children who have not made applications yet, as their parents are not aware that children have to apply. Especially children who are born here in the UK, parents are convinced that they don't have to apply actually, and they're not making applications. So we're very concerned that this is a potential new windrush in the making in this situation. So, and we're making efforts to try to inform parents that the children have to make applications unless they're not. Unless they are British citizens, or unless they have indefinite leave to remain. And I think I'll stop here as it's already time. And please feel free to ask any other questions, as there is a lot more that can be said. Anyone who wants to know more about the EUSS, please go to our website, romasupportgroup.org.uk, where we have reports that we have released in June last year, statements, and a lot of work that we have done on specifically on the EU settlement scheme, which is accessible on our website. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mihai. That was fantastic. What we'll do now is we'll go to the question and answer section. I'll bring all the panelists back in. So I've unmuted you all. I know we're really pushed for time. So if people need to leave, just, we're recording it. I know it's the middle of the day, people have got work, but stick with us. We'll push on for another 10 minutes or so. But I am also recording this, and I will share it on all of the settled social media outputs, and I'll email all of the attendees after how you can ask further questions and find out a bit more about what everyone's spoken about. So I've been collecting a few questions. I think I'll put the first question to Hristo. We had a question here. It says, it's the first time I have heard of the enslavement of Roma people in Romania. Can you speak about how this has remained so hidden?
Well, one of the reasons that we didn't know about it so long time is this, that there was no recorded any documentation. The only small information about this we got from some of the posters which were spread in 1830s, 40s for open markets of Roma slaves. There were this kind of written posters that Roma women, children, men, slaves of this and that person will be sold on this date, on this place. So then some of the historians started to collect information about this and to make some interviews with the Roma, what they remember from their family histories through oral history. And this is how it came out. And it was in 1980s when Jan Hancock, a professor from United States, was publishing, he published a book, a monograph about this. And he was the first one to speak about this. And this came in 1980s only to be so well known and so well spread. Yeah, a lot of things which happened to Roma were not documented because the Roma were illiterate, and we had to rely on the registers which existed in some of the empires, and some non-Roma who were interested in Roma documenting some of the things which were happening to Roma. So last approximately 100 years, it's done a lot about the history of Roma, and but still there are so many archives around the world, especially the archives of the Ottoman Empire, which now are spread like in the Library of Istanbul, Library of Cairo, and the Library of Sofia in Bulgaria. And the experts who are able to read those archives, because everything is written in Old Arabic script, in Old Arabic alphabets, are not so many around the world. So there is still a lot of work to be done in order to rediscover the history of Roma.
Thank you, Hristo. On that topic of books, are there any books that you would recommend that are English language for people to read about the history of Roma?
Yeah, there is a book by Angus Fraser, The Gypsies, which was published at the beginning of the 90s. And this is one of the reliable good books,
Okay.
English. A little bit old, but still the information is very correct inside.
Okay, I'll share this with everyone by email after the event. We have a question now that is for maybe for Crina and Mihai, as you want to enter in. It's from Tanya, who works in the Gypsy Roma Traveller Educational Advisory Service in Norfolk. They're reassuring families they should complete the census, as more data can result in more resources for the community. How can we tackle this issue, and do you think that more representation of Roma community in the census will result in better resources? Crina, do you want to go?
Oh, well,
I think Mihai probably, I can add to what Mihai said.
Okay, Mihai.
Sure.
Yeah, this is a sensitive issue for us to touch on. There is because of the history, because of everything that Hristo mentioned earlier, there is a resistance from Roma to mention, publicly say that they are Roma, especially in registers, in books, in things like this, purely, because of what happened during the Nazi regime, and not only. And we do encourage people to confirm their identity in the census, by explaining them how the information is protected, how it's being used, and how it can actually help. What we do there is just to literally explain what is behind the census, and how this can help the whole community here in the UK. There is not a good way of doing that, or I don't know. There is not a one example of doing that. We are just having friendly conversations with people. We are reaching out to them through the trusted members of the community who they trust, who can explain this. We can only hope that they will, they will do that. We all know that, having them, filling in the census and mentioning, the Roma ethnicity, will then help us work on the existing policies and improve actually, the services that people can access to, and improve the overall situation of Roma in the UK. Our sort of message and what we put forward in trying to influence people to do the census and tick the box, the Roma tick box, is that it is our time to come forward as a whole Roma community in the UK, and this is the best way of doing that. This is a safe place for us. UK has provided, it is a safe place for the Roma people to come forward as a community, and it is the right time for us to do so. I don't know what else I can really add on that.
Yeah, if I can just add something, Mihai, I think whatever you said is very relevant, and I think all we can do at this point is to just make sure people are getting the information they need to know in order to make the best choice. But it is also important to underline that, of course, this is a legal requirement, and it is mandatory for everyone to do that. Otherwise, there will be fines. We do not know exactly at what level this will actually be implemented, but this is in the law, and we need to do it just to avoid any sort of risks. And it's also important to say that this data will not be actually shared with anyone. It will be kept confidential for the next 100 years, and it will not be shared with any local authorities, government, and so on. So people shouldn't fear that in any case they would be identified and then they would be at risk of anything, including deportation. This will not happen, and this is the official position of the National Office for Statistics, and this is based on our discussions with them, because exactly this was the point we also made. There is a fear that the people would not register themselves as Roma because of the past, of the history, and so on. We try to explain. Again, we come to that point where we say we need to educate the larger public about the Roma, because there's very little is known about them here. But what I think we need to do is just to do our best at this point. It is a bit fast. It's happening a bit fast. The pandemic is also going on. There is a national lockdown. The resources are limited. So all we can do is just to make sure we communicate to the people in the right way. That's all I think.
Yeah, thank
also,
you.
to add quickly on that, we have worked with the ONS on developing a media campaign on the census, and we have involved trusted members of the community, Roma advocates from different areas of the country, and I hope the materials will be out soon. I don't know when, really, but it is a specific campaign targeting Roma community specifically. I hope it will be out soon, but I can't give you a specific answer on that.
Great.
Okay, thank you. I'll try and squeeze in a couple more questions. This one is open to anyone. I think it might interest Hristo a little bit more. Is there a common thread connecting hostility to the Roma in different eras and countries? For example, fear of people moving, nationalism. Where does this hostility towards the Roma come from?
I think the human psychology, it's like when you see someone who is weaker than you to be more aggressive, more oppressive, more negative, with negative feelings. I didn't mention, but the Roma is the only nation in the world which never started war against any other nation. The Roma never occupied any other people. Every moment when they had some conflicts or problems with someone, with other nations, or in the situation of war, the Roma were moving further. They were simply going away. And this is to do with the philosophy of Roma, which comes from the Indian philosophy, the peace. So the respect to everyone, the peace with everyone. It's one very big part of the philosophy of nowadays Roma, even still, although that they left India 1,000 years ago. But this is how shall I say it? When the other nations see weak people, I think this is the wish somehow to oppress those weak people and to assimilate them, to kill them. And I don't know if I did answer the question.
I'd like to add on that in my opinion, I think this comes during these days when we talk so much about human rights and equality and so on. I think this comes purely from laziness. People are lazy these days and they don't want to read and understand and write and get informed before they act, before they make some moves. And this is even more sort of represented when we're talking about those from the Roma communities. We see this in the media, with journalists usually just using language which is already there about the community and not making enough efforts to inform themselves and to write accurately about the community. We see this with politicians who simply just use the words, the language existing about the community and so on. And we don't see enough efforts by academics to drive the way that people, communities, societies are speaking about those from our communities. This is my personal view. In the cases where people are making these efforts, we see the situation is totally different. When a journalist makes enough effort to get in touch with someone from the Roma community, to visit them, to go to their home, to interview them and so on, that person will be then touched for life, and they will have their opinion about the community will be totally different for the rest of their life, because usually we are friendly people. We invite people to our homes, we put food on the table and so on. Obviously, as in any other community, there are good and bad people. And it's the same with us, but this doesn't mean that we are all everything that it's said in the media or elsewhere. And this is my opinion, that people are just not making enough efforts. The information is not there. The history about our community is not there yet. We are just writing it now. And I think this is why the situation is just being multiplied. And it's just easy for people to say what other people have said already, and it's easy for people to say what it's already been generally accepted, because it's known that discrimination against the Roma community is the last form of acceptable racism, and this is not just something that we are just saying; it's a reality.
So I'll ask one final question. It should be quite straightforward, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. It's from Jacqueline. She asks, can you please help me to understand the difference between Roma and Gypsy? And from my perspective, we also have the term traveller. What is the definition of each word, and where is the crossover of the groups?
Well, actually, the Roma and Gypsy are the same people. Like in Germany, we have Roma and Sinti. But because of different factors throughout the history, some of the groups accepted one name or another name. But historically speaking, these are the same people. And with travelers, this is a little bit different. As far as I know, there are two types of travelers. The first type are travelers who have Gypsy origin, Roma origin, and they have the life which they have, living in caravans. But also there are travelers who are, this happened some 100 years ago, who were in contact with the Roma people, Gypsy people in that time, and they started to move with them, but they don't have the Indian origin, let's say it like this. So the Gypsies and the Roma usually have the Indian origin. And there are also this French Manouche, the German Sintis, the Spanish Gitanos, and the French Gitan. They have the Indian origin. But among the travelers, not all of them have the Indian origin. Maybe this is the simplest way to say it and to explain it.
Okay, excellent. Right, well, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists, and a big thank you to everybody who has come as an attendee. I will email everyone after this, letting you know where the recording goes, how you can ask more questions of the panelists, and in the meantime, if you would like to learn more about Settled, you can go to settled.org.uk and to Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn, and just search for We Are Settled. So thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.